This is Fresh Air. I'm Terry Gross. You can get a sense of my guest Issa Rae's self-image by the titles of her best-known works. Her new HBO series is called Insecure. The web comedy series and memoir that preceded it were both titled The Misadventures of Awkward Black Girl. They're all about issues of identity and feelings of not fitting in, things Issa Rae dealt with all the time when she was growing up. She was one of the few black kids in her school in Maryland, but when her family moved to South LA, she wasn't considered black enough. She has also lived in Senegal, where her father is from, where she was the only American in her school. Rae co-created HBO's Insecure with Larry Wilmore, and she stars in it as a 29-year-old woman whose life seems to have stalled. She lives with her boyfriend, but isn't sure the relationship has a future, and her job isn't fulfilling her creative impulses. She works as the youth liaison at a nonprofit called WHYY, which works with predominantly African-American schools, offering students mentoring programs, after-school tutoring, standardized test coaching, and other things to try to supplement what the students haven't been getting in school. Here's a scene from episode 1 in which she's talking to a class of junior high students.
As youth liaison, I can assure you that whatever it is you need to succeed, we got y'all. So do y'all have any questions? Don't be shy, guys. Fire away.
Why you talk like a white girl?
You caught me. I'm rocking blackface. Any other questions?
What's up with your hair?
I don't know what you mean.
My cousin can put some tracks in it, unless you like it like that.
You rude. She African.
We're all from Africa, guys.
Absolutely. Let's stick to questions about the program.
Is this what you always want to do?
No. But I got this job after college, and it fit my interest at the time.
Are you single?
I don't think that's appropriate.
Yeah, she's single.
Okay. Since you guys are so interested in my personal life, here it is. I'm 28, actually 29, because today's my birthday. I came from a great family. I have a college degree. I work in the nonprofit world because I like to give back. I've been with my boyfriend for 5 years, and I did this to my hair on purpose. So I hope that covers everything. Does anybody actually have any questions about We Got Y'all?
Why ain't you married?
I'm just not, right now.
My dad said ain't nobody checking for bitter-ass black women anymore.
Denise, that's detention. Apologize now.
Sorry.
That's okay. And tell your dad that black women aren't bitter. They're just tired of being expected to settle for less.
Her outfit settled for less.
That's Issa Rae from the first episode of her series Insecure. Issa Rae, I love the series. Welcome to Fresh Air.
Thank you so much, Terry.
You really set the tone in that scene. I mean, you work for this nonprofit that you're the only African-American at that organization. But when you get in front of, like, the African-American students, and I forget if it's junior high or high school.
Junior high.
Yeah, so they just start, like, mocking you, you know, like your hair, the way you speak, that your clothes, they don't like your clothes. You're not married. So I just think it's so interesting that you start the series off with discomfort coming at you from both the white people that you work with and the black kids that you're trying to help.
Yeah, we wanted to kind of paint that this character is in between two worlds and is just in a constant state of discomfort. And, you know, that is kind of reflected in the title of this series, but just in terms of her own experiences, you know, not black enough for the black people and not, you know, white enough for the white people. So initially that scene was in the middle of the script, but in editing, we decided to put it at the front just because, or to make it the opening scene just because it really identified, you know, exactly who she is when you see that first scene.
So the things that your character is mocked for by the junior high school kids, where do those lines come from? Did kids in junior high say that to you?
Yes. Pretty much everything aside from the why aren't you married part I've been asked. Actually, in my adult life, I've been asked, why are you married? What am I talking about? But all of those questions those kids ask, I've been asked at some point in time. So that was all truth, and you just wanted to have her face all of those questions at once in a very irritating way.
Just another thing I really love about that scene is that you're being insulted for things you're proud of. You know, your hair, the way you speak. And you're being insulted by children, a big group of them. And they're kind of like ganging up on you. Have you ever been in that position? I mean, I have when I taught briefly. It was just really awful to supposed to be the adult in the room and like the kids are just like mocking you. And
Kids are so good at that, though. They're so witty, and especially at that age. They're like 11 or 12, so it feels like their sense of humor is just getting honed, and it kind of gets mean to that point. Like they're trying to one-up one another to be the funniest. And I, even in my adult life, like if I see a group of kids, you know, having a conversation, having a good time, I will cross the street because, like, at that time, they're just so mean and so funny at the same time. Like, I think about so many of the things that kids made fun of me for and the insults they had. And in hindsight, I'm just like, they were funny. They were really, really funny kids, but it hurt my feelings.
can we get to some of the things they insulted you for?
Definitely my hair. I remember one girl saying to me just that nobody should fight me because I would probably take something out of my nappy hair and throw it at them. Like I was just hiding weapons in my hair. They were really funny, though. They were just jerks, but they had a very specific sense of humor.
So let's hear a scene at work. So this is from the start of the series where you're describing the nonprofit that you work at, which is called We Got Y'all. And you're talking about the organization. And as you're doing this kind of voiceover thing, we see images of where you work. And we see your white boss wearing a dashiki. The office is full of posters of Martin Luther King and Beyonce and a photo of the boss with President Obama. And at the end of this voiceover, it cuts to you and you're in front of a mirror and you're rapping in front of the mirror. In this series, this is the equivalent sometimes of your voiceover narrative. You know what I mean? Like you're talking to yourself, but you're doing it in rap. So that's how this scene ends, but it starts with a voiceover.
My boss founded a nonprofit to help kids from the hood, but she didn't hire anybody from the hood.
I'm torn between the Booker T method and the Du Bois method. What would James Baldwin say is most beneficial for people of color?
In 2016? I've been here 5 years and they think I'm the token with all the answers.
Let's just ask Issa. Issa, what's on fleek?
I don't know what that means. I know what that means. But being aggressively passive is what I do best. I used to keep a journal to vent. Now I just write raps. Go, shawty. It's my birthday, but no one cares because I'm not having a party. Because I'm feeling sorry for myself.
Okay, and you rap much better than that later. Later in the series.
Do I?
Yes. In my opinion, yes. So part of the series is about, you know, being the person who you think is like the token black person at work. And your best friend is the only African American in the law firm where she works. She's a lawyer. So did you being an artist, like you're working on TV shows and this is like your own show, it's like your creation. Did you work in a nonprofit where you felt similar to how your character does?
Absolutely. I've worked in a couple of nonprofit settings. I've worked in briefly in the corporate world and have definitely been the sole person of color, the sole black person. And for me, with this organization in the series, We Got Y'all, I really wanted to just depict my nightmare nonprofit organization. I found the world of nonprofits funny to begin with just because having worked there, you see that people are so altruistic and they're so benevolent and they're pretty selfless and you're working generally for a great cause. But the atmosphere within the work environment can be oddly competitive. People want the credit. Sometimes they don't listen to the people they're trying to help. And for me, this white guilt is so prevalent at this nonprofit, and they treat the kids as this pity party. And for me, I would hate to work in an environment like this, but it's ripe for comedy.
And your character's in the position of having like a great Kenyan leader quoted to her by a white person. The white person is sitting down your character saying like, you got to work harder. You don't seem to be invested in the work anymore. And she says, if you're not invested in the work, maybe this isn't the place for you. And then she quotes this great Kenyan leader as saying, the leader who doesn't take advice is not a leader. And your character's kind of rolling her eyes that, she's getting this Kenyan quote quoted back at her. Is that something that you experience and that bothers you when it happens?
No one's quoted a Kenyan proverb to me, thankfully. But I have had, people. And in this scene, it's kind of hard because the boss isn't wrong. Like, Issa has not been putting herself out there. And I have been called out for just not being present. And that's been correct, So I was working at jobs that I knew that I didn't want to be at long term because I wanted to pursue my dreams. And then conversely, I have had, white people kind of try to take my Black card in a sense and use examples of mainstream Blackness, quote unquote, and use me as a reference for why I don't act Black. And that's been extremely frustrating, just to be like, well, how are you going to, in your limited definition of Blackness, try to paint me as non-Black? It's kind of absurd.
So there's a lot of code switching that happens in Insecure. And your character even is practicing different ways of speaking and being in rehearsing options that she can say to her ex-boyfriend when she meets him for the first time in several years. And she's in front of the mirror putting on different shades of lipstick. And with each shade of lipstick she puts on, she talks differently. And then after doing this for a long time, she finally just puts on lip balm. To me, the lip balm means not like, I am proud of who I am and I'm just going to be myself. It's more like, I'm resigned to who I am and I have no choice but to be myself.
Yep, that's it. It's the easiest to be myself at this point.
So can you talk about some of the different ways of speaking that your character is trying on to rehearse approaching her ex-boyfriend?
Well, in that particular scene, she's already made a declaration that she wants to go after what she wants. And these lipsticks allow her to try on literally different personalities and to try to be the fun one, the aggressive one, the exotic, dainty one. And, at the end of the day, she realizes, okay, I'm not good at being any of these people, and I just might as well be myself. And she has a lot of those moments in the bathroom in particular. I think the bathroom is definitely her safe space and the space where she can actually be vulnerable and express herself in an extremely honest way. It's the only place that she is actually honest with herself and expresses her thoughts in a way that she can't in the outside world because she's a self-described aggressively passive person. So you'll see a lot of those mirror moments where she's kind of forced to face her truth and herself at the end of the day.
So it seems to me you have a very complicated relationship with rap, starting with when you moved to South LA after having grown up in Maryland and having gone to a predominantly white but multicultural, but kind of diverse school in Potomac, Maryland. You had also lived for a while in Senegal. Your father's from Senegal. So when you moved to South LA, what did rap mean to the students in your school there, and how much did you know about the music when you moved there?
I only knew what my older brothers, so I have two older brothers, and they were super into hip hop, rap, and they would try to introduce me to artists, but I was more into R&B and just pop music in general. And I was young, and my mom shielded me specifically and my younger siblings from explicit lyrics and explicit music in general. So they could introduce me, but I didn't really pay attention. And so by the time I moved to LA, I was great. I was really well versed in R&B. nobody could touch me there. But I wasn't as into rap as a lot of the other students. And I remember the year that I started 6th grade, Tupac died. And I didn't know much about him. And obviously, Tupac and LA go hand in hand to a degree. Like LA claims Tupac really hard. And I didn't know him. So when everyone was devastated that he died, I wanted to be part of the conversation and had only read his name and hadn't heard it. And so I came up to a bunch of classmates who already did not like me already and was just like, oh my God, I heard that Tupac died? What did he sing? And was just shunned for the rest of the quarter.
When your character raps in the series in an early episode, I'm going to keep this really clean for the radio. The rap
Good
is
luck.
about a woman's privates, and which is a popular subject for a lot of rap music. But
So unfair.
but this is more from a woman's point of view of somebody whose privates have kind of had enough. And so, and then later on, your character is listening to a male rapper in a recording studio who's just doing this really just kind of just misogynist kind of filthy rap. It's an interesting contrast between the two. But did you see yourself as taking that kind of explicit rap lyric and doing it from like a woman's point of view?
I saw it as just doing something very raw. And yeah, I mean, I think that the P word, which is used, is something that up until recently, up until Donald Trump came around, we were like shying away from and was always seen as vulgar or like claimed by men, and kind of wanted to reclaim it for women and kind of force you to bump the song, to like it, and to get it stuck in your head. But that conversation about a woman's nether regions is actually one that I've had with my very close friend.
So let me ask you about the web title, Awkward Black Girl. That's how you saw yourself for a long time. Where did the awkward part come in, which I imagine is the same kind of part that your series takes its name from, Insecure?
Yeah, well, I was sitting on my bed in New York one day and just thinking about having a reflective moment and trying to figure out what I wanted to do and what my issues were, and just was writing in my notebook and wrote down the phrase, I'm awkward, period, and black. And that was just a revelatory moment for me in so many ways. Like, I knew I was black, obviously, but the awkward part really just defined me in a sense. Like, it defined why I was always like socially uncomfortable. It defined my introvert status. It defined like why I didn't fit into mainstream media's definition of blackness. And I just thought that felt like an identity that I had not seen reflected in television or film before, or at least in a very long time, not since the 90s, with side characters. But I'd never seen like a lead black girl just be awkward.
So what made you think that the parts of your life that made you feel awkward and insecure you could claim as an identity and then use that to your advantage and create a character who would be kind of like funny and relatable and everything, and that so you could turn what you perceived as like your weakness into a strength?
Well, for me, it came from watching shows like Seinfeld and Curb Your Enthusiasm, and even 30 Rock, and just identifying with a very specific sense of humor that those shows had, but also being like, wow, there are no people of color in these shows that have the same sense of humor, and wondering like, why is there this segregated humor? There seems to be like black humor and there seems to be white humor, and a lot of my friends' tastes, we like both, but we don't get to see ourselves reflected on the quote unquote white humor side. And so I wanted to take these traits in the same way that a lot of my favorite comedians have done it, and Ellen included. Ellen takes so many relatable, embarrassing moments and amplifies them and makes it like, oh my God, I've been through that too, and that's so funny. and have a black character go through those things and make it very racially specific but universal at the same time.
This is Fresh Air. I'm Terry Gross, back with Issa Rae, the co-creator and star of the HBO comedy series Insecure, which premiered on HBO a few weeks ago. Before that, she created and starred in the web comedy series The Misadventures of Awkward Black Girl, the same title she gave her memoir. When we left off, we were talking about her childhood. She was one of the few black students in her elementary school in Potomac, Maryland. When she moved to L.A., she went to a predominantly black junior high. She says it was a bit of a culture shock.
It was, just because I was watching a lot of television. So I watched shows like Saved by the Bell. Even though that wasn't set in LA, I just thought that would be my LA experience. And 90210.
That's hilarious.
And just was excited to be able to go to junior high and have lockers. Like, there was just something sexy and alluring about lockers to me. And there was a culture shock in that way, that I was not the popular girl, that no one cared that I came from Maryland, that I was just not, people always said that I talked like a white girl, and my hair did not have the positive traits it had for being natural like it did when I was in Maryland. And I was just like out of place. And, I think part of that was also that I was a nerd too, but I just remember thinking like, whoa, I do not fit in. And I wonder why that is. And it's a period of time that I always reference in my work, I find.
Did your parents help you through that at all? Did they have any helpful advice or reassurance?
Well, my dad, just being African, was like, deal with it. Like, stop crying. And my mom, she tried to get it, but her thing was just always about embracing it. And nobody wants to hear that. Like, I think being a teen and being a preteen is all about, like, fitting in and not standing out. And everything that she told me to do would cause me to stand out. Like, embrace your hair. And, if they're talking about the way that you're talking, then just say, I'm smart. That's why, or I'm speaking English correctly. And it's like, Mom, no, nobody wants to. I'm not trying to feel superior. I want people to like me.
What was your father's attitude to the whole American thing about what it means to be black, and are you black enough, and are you authentic, and all that? Because coming from Africa, I'm not sure whether all of that would have made any sense to him.
It didn't, and he didn't really subscribe to those notions. I mean, he understood that there were obstacles that black people faced, but in his mind, those are obstacles that you can overcome just by working hard and by doing the right thing. And we've never really had conversations about race, just because, while he acknowledges a lot of the burdens, he's also like his own success story. He came from a family of, 7 kids, the oldest, and came from Dakar, Senegal, and is a successful doctor here. And so he's just like very much about working hard. And in some ways, I realize that in not having those discussions with him and just seeing what he's done, I've been able to kind of do that on my end too. Like, I do refuse to see obstacles to a degree. And I acknowledge that they exist, but I refuse to kind of let them affect me. And I guess I'm just realizing that about him.
So you lived for, I think, 2 periods of your life in Senegal?
Just one period in my life.
And the other time was just for a visit?
Visiting. So I used to go back, like, every summer.
So how did
I'm overstating that. Sorry.
Lots of summers.
Yes, lots of summers.
So in terms of like fitting in versus feeling awkward, how did you register those feelings in Senegal? Where did you fit on the scale?
It's so interesting because my Americanness brought me some street cred in a way, just because pop culturally, I had a lot of cousins out there. And I remember going there for the summer. Everyone would gather at like 4:00 to watch Alec au Malibu, which was like Baywatch. And that was like the show to watch. And then 90210 would come on right afterwards. And I remember them asking me like, wow, you're from LA. Do you see Donna? Do you see Dylan just on the street? And I'd be like, yeah, I do. I was just at Kelly's house last week. And And they bought it. And that, like, my Americanness for the pop cultural side was valued in a way and made me cool.
You write that the first time in your life you ever felt beautiful was when you went back to Senegal when you were in your sophomore year of high school, and that was the first time you had boys and men pining after you. Were you considered more beautiful in Senegal than you were in LA?
Yeah, I think when you're in a country with people who look like you and have your features and who are married to people with your features and attracted to it, it makes it a lot easier. But I mean, I just grew to appreciate where I came from more and felt also appreciated in a way that I did not in Los Angeles, California.
When you were getting started and starting to get serious about, writing and acting, your apartment was broken into, and your laptops, your videos, your cameras, all your work was basically stolen. You hadn't backed up. Shame on you. Did you interpret a hidden message with that, like the gods were telling you just like give up, or that the gods were telling you start a different project, or you know what I mean? Sometimes something happens to you and you figure like there's a secret message here. What does it mean?
That's such a good point, actually. So I was in New York when that happened, and I was struggling. And, well, the start a different project aspect that you just said is so interesting, just because that's the advice that I always give to up-and-coming creatives, because I have seen people constantly try to peddle the same project over the course of years. And it's like, you should have multiple projects going on. And I think I was in a state where I was trying to peddle the same project and trying to get it to television. And I actually... the day after the robbery, I was supposed to have a meeting. Like the day before, I was supposed to have this major meeting to try to take this project to television is when my apartment got robbed and I lost all of the materials that I didn't back up. Thanks, Terry. But that was for me, a great sign that, one, I shouldn't be in New York. Like I was willingly struggling, and I stayed there an extra year after that despite knowing that, and that I needed to try other projects. And that next year is when I came up with the idea for Awkward Black Girl, but didn't necessarily pursue it because I felt like I was too broke, but just started writing more. And also that next year, I also decided to move back to LA where I knew people and I had more resources and could rely on people to actually help me get my projects done.
So your first series, Awkward Black Girl, was a web series, and it was a very successful web series. What was your approach to getting some attention, to getting noticed? The web has like so much stuff on it. Anyone could put anything on there, but it takes a lot to have somebody else notice that it's there.
Yeah, well, by the time I did Awkward Black Girl, it was my third go-round. I was actively producing another web series about my brother's group, my brother's music group, trying to make it in LA. And it was the first time that I had started to take web series seriously, and that I was producing an episode every Monday at 10 a.m. You could expect a new episode. And, I would put off social plans to be like, no, I have to edit this, and no, I have to write the outline for the episode and then shoot it. And putting in work just so that we could build an audience. And I realized, and I was like, man, it's just not doing the numbers that I want. And I feel like they're so talented and it's really good. And what is the issue? Each episode was 7 minutes. And that could have been part of our problem during that time. So by the time I did Awkward Black Girl, I was like, I'm going to learn from all the mistakes of my other two web series. For one, I know the first episode won't be longer than 3 or 4 minutes because people don't have attention spans. Also, I'm just going to write what's close to me and what I know and really tap into my network, which is not to say I wasn't doing that for the other web series, but I really just put it out there to my family and friends and made it for my family and friends and just published it to Facebook, went to sleep, and by the time I woke up, it had really spread amongst my social network and people were spreading the word on their own in a way that they weren't or they hadn't done for my previous web series.
So how'd you go from YouTube to HBO? It's a big jump.
Oh, that was a journey as well. Our second season of Awkward Black Girl was produced by Pharrell Williams via his I Am Other company. And that got press, and we got reviewed in the New York Times for our second season opening. And that got the attention of ABC and Shondaland, and I got an opportunity to develop a pilot with them, a completely different pilot called I Hate LA Dudes. And ABC ended up passing on that project. And, I was devastated. I was like, man, I blew my one shot. And then HBO called me and said, hey, we heard that you're free. Not a month later or 2 months later, they said, hey, we heard that you're free. Do you have any ideas to pitch for us? And then I pitched them the idea that ultimately became Insecure.
So when you were a kid and watching TV and not exactly seeing yourself represented, you were sending in scripts at a really young age, like spec scripts. Like, what kind of kid were you?
Yeah, I mean, I will
scripts.
say that, well, when I was a kid, I did have, like, the 90s gave me everything. We had Fresh Prince, we had Living Single, we had, all these shows. And it was when I got to, I think, high school and college that I didn't see myself represented. And when I was younger, like, it felt like I wanted to be a part of the writers' rooms. I wanted to write my own show. And so, like, I remember the show Cosby came out, which was a different iteration of the Cosby Show. And I sent in a script for that. And I remember going to my first live taping of a show in LA when we moved back when I was 11, was Moesha. And I got to be in the live studio audience and watch what I say was the last, like, regular black girl we had on TV, Moesha, regular lead black girl we had. And I remember just sitting in that audience, taking it all in and loving it. And then I want to say that I won a copy of the script for that episode. And it was pink, and I still have it in a box somewhere, but that script is tattered because I would always use that as, like, the template to write scripts. And so when I wrote my Cosby spec script, when I wrote my original spec script, like, it was always based on that format. And
What did you learn by studying that script so carefully?
I mean, 3-act structure, just how, obviously it was a shooting script, so I didn't understand that at the time. So there was so much, there's a lot of lingo that I just didn't get. But for me, it just felt like doable. It was like, oh my gosh, I have the key, I have the secret of how it's done, and the formula is at my fingertips. And I just remember rereading to see, like, oh, okay, there was sort of a cliffhanger before this commercial break, so I need to have that in my own script. Or there was a significant plot device for character A, but not on the B story. So just, like, really trying to break it down in a way that was familiar to me in watching so much TV. And of course, I have no doubt that my own scripts were terrible, but it just felt like I could do this.
How did you know who to send the scripts to?
My grandmother was great about, helping me to research. She was very computer savvy, and I remember, typing the scripts on her Mac computer and her teaching me how to copyright them and teaching me to, like, Yahoo, the head of NBC. And for me, it was just like writing a cover letter to who I saw was the head or the president of NBC. And I remember getting some notices back. Like,
But you wrote to the president of the network?
Yeah, but of course from NBC being like, hey, thanks for submitting, but we don't take unsolicited scripts.
From children, yeah.
Yeah, from babies, yeah.
Did you ever get any encouraging notes in return?
The most encouraging note I got ever was when I saw Love and Basketball and fell in love with that movie, and that actually made me want to write films. And I remember writing my own script just because I love that movie so much, and I reached out to Gina Prince Bythewood. I don't know how I got her address, but I wrote her a letter and just told her how Love and Basketball inspired me, and I would really love for her to direct my script if she ever had the time. But just either way, I loved her. And 3 months passed, and I forgot that I wrote her a letter, but then I got an email from her that gave me all the props for writing a script at 16. And then she told me about the son that she was going to have and was like, unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to direct your script, but please keep doing it. And just was super encouraging. And I remember, holding on to that letter. I still have it and feeling super encouraged to continue. And then she watched Awkward Black Girl, and she actually we actually referenced the movie Love and Basketball in an episode of Awkward Black Girl. So to know that she had seen it and given me props and encouraged me again was incredible. And then I showed her the letter that she sent me. I sent it back to her, and she was just amazed that I had it, and that, she was like, thank God I wrote you back.
If you're just joining us, my guest is Issa Rae. She's the creator and star of the HBO series Insecure, and before that, she created and starred in the web series Awkward Black Girl. So were you brought up with traditions, cultural or religious, from either of your parents?
Well, my mom is a Christian, and so she raised us as Christians, and so, that was pretty much the extent of it. I think when I went back to Senegal for certain summers, if Ramadan would fall during the summer, or Tabaski, which is like the celebration after Ramadan, where they kill a goat to celebrate, that is the closest. But for the most part, I've really just tried to form my own opinions and forge my own relationship with spirituality.
So since your father was brought up in the Muslim tradition and the Muslim faith, what's it been like for you to watch his faith be demonized by parts of America?
Well, for me, it's just always been puzzling, just because half of my family is Muslim, so the picture that's being painted is of an extreme, facet of Islam, and that's like holding Christianity accountable for the actions of the KKK. It's always been absurd to me, and I've seen, and obviously I have Muslim friends too who just hate that the reputation of Islam is being held by this small group of violent people. It's absolutely unfair, and I've seen him get upset over it, and a lot of my family members rebuke the actions of these terrorists at the end of the day. But that shouldn't be. It just has never made sense to me that people will take a small group of people and judge an entire group.
So I listen to a lot of voices hosting this show, and I love your voice. You have a beautiful voice. It's so deep and resonant. And so when you were how old were you when it started to get that kind of depth, that resonance? You didn't have that in high school, did you?
I don't know. I do not know. It's so funny, this generation, I was saying, we're so used to seeing ourselves and listening to ourselves now that it's just not a big deal. But I remember being hearing my voice on a voicemail and being like, ugh, stop it, make it stop. And, now I just don't even think about it. So I've always thought I had a deep voice since high school, middle school, but I have no idea. But thank you.
It's interesting because your voice conveys a certain confidence that you say that you've lacked in real life.
That's very helpful. Well, that might be why people don't think that. People are always like, oh, it's so funny that you say that you're awkward, because you're not. And I'm like, because I fooled you. But I don't see the same. I don't see what they see.
Issa Rae, it's been great to talk with you. Congratulations on your series.
Terry, it's been an honor. Thank you so much.
Issa Rae is the co-creator and star of the HBO comedy series Insecure.